Hey, Spur Impact followers and Mill Summit future attendees. I'm Jake Voorhees. Here we have it, the Mill Summit live stream tonight, April 28th. And we have tonight on the show a special guest for you, Melissa Carson, who is an executive coach, a leadership expert. She's waving to you right now. She's someone who has studied how to find passion in your work, how to make sure that you don't hate your job. You can actually figure out how you can thrive in your career instead of just surviving, and has plenty of tips on how to do that successfully. And for people who want to potentially build a side hustle during the COVID-19 pandemic and want to build momentum so that in the fall or winter season, you can start to launch an actual business, maybe even in the early aspects of 2021. But either way, we have plenty of tips coming up from Melissa Carson today. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, Melissa. How are you? Love to hear your intro right now. Thanks for showing up on the show. Thank you.
I am so excited to be here on this Tuesday evening. It's actually been a really great day of just a lot of positive reinforcement on the things that I'm doing. The sun was out, so that always makes my mood really good. So I'm excited on the topics that we've hit today because I fundamentally believe that work should not suck. Workplaces can be better than they are, and life is short, so you got to do the things that you love. So excited to chat about that tonight.
That's what it's all about, honestly. And if it was any time to believe that life was short before now is the time. And before we get started with a true, actual conversation, we have to give a big shout out and thank you to our core sponsor for the Mill Summit live stream, which is Capital One. Thank you so much for providing the support that you do for now our 4th annual conference, all of the live stream aspects that come into this on the way to the Mill Summit. So Melissa, one of the things I like to kick off with the stream is, as a professional, as a consultant, as a person who's trying to navigate what used to be normal life and career aspects, now we have COVID-19. So what are some of the patterns or just overall generalities that you've had to adapt to in order to navigate the future that is 2020 today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. And I think one of the realities is that we're all at a very different place in the journey of what did the restrictions from COVID-19 mean for us? Because some of you are in frontline jobs and still working and working harder and crazier. Some of you are not working, whether it's due to furlough or a layoff. Some things have just shifted a little bit. I've been blessed in that I was predominantly work from home for many, many years before this. My husband was also work from home since we moved to Delaware in 2002. And so that part's been easy. And thankfully we have high schoolers, so they are relatively self-sufficient. But I think what we start finding is the things that as soon as somebody says we can't do something, we really want to do it more. So I'm really good working from home most of the time, but now that I can't go to a coffee shop and meet somebody, I really want to go to a coffee shop and meet somebody. And so I think one of it is just realizing first, what are the things that you didn't realize were really kind of important in your daily schedule. I think the other thing which we found is that the schedule needs to shift, whether that means for a positive, like you don't have to do a commute anymore. So does that mean you're sleeping in more? Does that mean that you're getting your workout in consistently? Is it, are you using that time that you've just found potentially in a way that brings value to your life? And in some cases, some of you have young kids at home. So you're doing your work, you're doing daycare, you're doing school, you're doing life. And so for you, that adjustment has been huge and it's hard. So I must say I'm a little bit blessed that it hasn't been as challenging for me as it is, for many of the people that I know.
Yeah, that's one thing that is interesting, is that you have a very wide spectrum of impact and effect on people's lives and careers and businesses and home styles, and it's an unknown landscape. And one of the things, Melissa, that you are particularly talented around is stepping outside of your comfort zone as a career professional, as a consultant. And honestly, just like what you just framed, and as all of us in the COVID-19 days have experienced, we are entirely outside of our comfort zones, right? We're not even close. I have no idea. Like, so one just to add some context here, Nerd It Now is very exciting right now. But the other thing that Marquivas and I run totally changed, right? So we had a whole plan for the year. Everything's different now. So Melissa, in being an expert in comfort zone and stepping outside of comfort zones, which I can personally attest to being exactly there, what are a core, maybe 1 or 2 tips that you would give for people to navigate this time right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ones, I would go all the way back. So when I graduated from college a long time ago, I was supposed to work in a government consulting job in DC. So I graduated, my roommate moved up there, I got there, and there was no job. So talk about losing your comfort zone. I remember sitting in the metro in the Northern Virginia area, like, holy crud, what am I gonna do? And sometimes when those things happen to you, you are forced to go figure it out and sort of trust that the universe is going to, take over. And I ended up I had a government background from university. I ended up in banking and a management training program and working at Nordstrom. So not quite what I thought it was going to be. So, so stepping out of your comfort zone sometimes just happens to you, like it did in this COVID situation. If I think about further down my career, I worked in a large organization, Accenture, and we reorged so many times. And for me, that worked out really well because I liked to change my role every couple of years because I liked doing stuff. I didn't like being stuck doing the same thing. Maybe it's because I didn't want to be caught like that. I didn't really know what I was doing, get in, get out type of thing. But it gave me that variety. But about almost 3.5 years ago, I made a decision to say, I'm not sure this is it. Like I've been here almost 19 years at the time. I think there's more, but I don't know what that is. And so I resigned. Didn't have a job. I had a plan to say I have enough money, to last a couple months. But I don't know what I'm going to do. And I think up until the end, people thought I was not really going to leave because they're like, you have no plan. And so some of it is just trusting your gut to know this isn't right, and knowing, hey, I'm good enough at something that I can go get a job. Like if at the end of the day, I could go do retail or go do something, go to McDonald's if I had to, if I really need to pay my bills. Now, it worked out for me that I found a job, like I was not really unemployed. I went on a vacation and then started new. So it worked out really well for me. But if you fast forward to last winter, I started thinking, I really like this coaching thing. I had thought about when I left before, did I start my own business or not? And I had 2 reasons not to. 1, I wasn't sure I could grow a business. And 2, I still really wanted to be part of something. Like I didn't want to be on my own. But last winter, a variety of things happened and people talking and I realized that life's short. What am I waiting for? Like, yes, I'll save some more money over the next couple of years because I was going to wait till my kids were out of high school. And I just said, you know what? I have some savings. I'm going to go figure this out. And so I think the 2 things I would say about comfort zone is, 1, if you're in your comfort zone too long, like you're probably not learning. Now, there are times in our lives where you make a conscious decision to say, I'm taking care of a parent or a child, like I need stable. But at a point, if you're in that comfort zone too long, you're going to probably get bored and not be challenged. And so stepping out of it also is looking at, okay, what are the most likely things that could happen? Yes, everything under the sun could go wrong, but how likely are those things? Because usually I would joke that I would be, poor and destitute on the street. Now, I'm married. My husband has a good job. We have saved, like that was a pretty unlikely scenario. So I think figure out what your risk tolerance is, but also think about what's the worst thing that's going to happen, because I'd rather not regret trying something. Like I'd rather not have the regrets.
Wow. Well, so you just provided about 4, 5, 6, maybe 50 golden nuggets there. It's really good, especially that grand finale. I'm taking notes the whole time, but to be honest with you, a personal thing around my strategies is always like, okay, what are we going to do if the worst thing happens? If we can figure out worst case scenario, we're going to be fine. And another thing that resonated with me is that I think a lot of us right now, entrepreneurs, people trying to navigate the most strategic career, nonprofit directors, you have to figure out how to navigate this unforeseen time, right? And you have to have this attitude, just like when Melissa said, we're going to figure this out right now, right? Because if you don't have that attitude, chances are you're probably not going to figure that out right now. And so mindset is a big part of this as you embark on a time that is the most uncertain of all time. And I think one thing that is super important in ensuring that you are in the right situation to succeed and figure out what is in front of you is to look back and make sure that you're in the right spot. And one thing that you spend a little bit of time around, Melissa, is also passion finding and making sure that you're actually headed as a leader, as a career professional, or a business owner in the right passion lane. And this is a time, I think, where people have an opportunity to maybe reflect, look in the mirror, and make sure that they're headed in the right direction as we continue forward out of this pandemic. And as people do that, I'm sure you have some advice, again, as a thought leader here, Melissa, in making sure that people are headed in the right career or business trajectory. What do you have to say to these people?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. One is there's not one right path. I mean, there's probably a right path for you, but I think also looking at some of the comments there around figuring out what you love to do. And, people will say, follow your passion. And I'm okay on that part. Passion may not always make you money. I am much more focused on what are the things that bring you joy in the workplace. So not the job. You say, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? A fireman, a doctor, a lawyer, a software developer, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I ask the question, like, what excites you at work? So if you think about a perfect day or a day where you were energized and you walk away like, oh, that was an awesome day. What did you spend your time doing? Because I think if you can start building a job around those things that really excite you, we all have stuff in our jobs that we don't love to do. And that's just a part of, you're always going to have a percentage. But how do you find those things that excite you more of the time? And so your job doesn't feel like a job. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun because you're excited, you're challenged, and it's working out for you. And I think whether that is within an organization or it's doing your own thing, I don't think that matters so much. And I think also people put pressure, like I've got to have it all figured out by the time I'm 25 or by the time I get married or by the time I have kids. And I'd say no. I mean, looking back, I didn't have it all figured out. And the path, like, a government degree with a French minor to banking to I ended up in recruiting in retail for a while and then in HR. And I am not the people person. I like to go figure stuff. I'm not that traditional touchy-feely HR person. I'm that person who loves to go look at the problem and say, okay, how do we solve that? What are the things that are coming together? So, and those are the things, like I had a realization probably about a year and a half ago that I was like, oh, I love traveling. Well, I don't necessarily love traveling. What I loved about it is I was going to a meeting, like I was stepping out of my day-to-day job and I was meeting with different people and trying to figure out how to solve their problems. And I was like, that's what really excites me. It's not necessarily being out of town and seeing a new city, but that's all good. But I think finding those things that you're really excited about, like when you think about a Sunday night and waking up Monday morning, are you looking forward to it? And how much of your time is going to be that stuff?
Yeah, it's hugely refreshing to hear you say this, Melissa, because there's really two thoughts here. I've heard a lot of people say, figure out that thing that you would do if tomorrow was the day you die and do that over and over again until that actual day that you die. And then what can you do over and over and over again that doesn't feel like work? And that's really hard to discover because most people are plagued with a situation where most of their day is things that they don't love. So by the time they get to the thing they love, it's like, doesn't feel like we love this. So what I want to do here is actually get right to, I like that someone just highlighted it, get right to a question. And I think we're going to go into one more leadership question, but before that, we actually have a question about freelancing and breaking into your own journey. Melissa, I think you would be a really good candidate to solve this question. So I think this might be from Sarah. For many millennials, the risk, they believe, is often much higher into diving into something new, right? Taking that plunge is the scariest aspect of this, right? So the question is, are there advantages or disadvantages to go out on your own earlier or later in your career? What do you think, Melissa?
I think it's actually both, because and why I say that. So if you go out earlier in your career, you might have less baggage. You might not have a partner that you need to help pay the bills or children, et cetera. So you might have a little bit more flexibility on your expenses because you just need to pay your rent. So it may give you flexibility from that perspective of taking a risk. On the flip side, depending on the business that you are starting, the question is, do you have enough expertise from, whether from your schooling or from volunteer work or just gig stuff that you've been doing on the side for you to be credible? So sometimes you'd say then, you should be in the workplace for a little while to build up some credibility for your skill. So it kind of depends on, hey, do I just have this idea, but I don't really have any expertise that I could say that I could bring to bear? That might be a little bit harder because people may have a hard time trusting you to go buy from you. Now, if you're building a really cool product, like an Etsy sewing type product that you want to start a business, if your quality of your product's great, then they probably don't care that you did it in a workplace or you had retail or product marketing background. So I think it depends on what kind of business you want to launch. But I think the biggest thing is, are you willing, if you go out on your own, whether it's early in your career or later in your career, are you willing to go all in? I heard a great podcast earlier this week of the former CEO of Jet.com and Diapers.com, and his first leap of faith. He was making a bunch of money, moved up really quickly, and decided he wanted to start his own gig and didn't have the money, didn't have the idea when he did it, but he went all in. And he said, every time I've done this, I've gone all in. So if you're that passionate and you're willing to do it, then do it whenever you're ready.
Yeah, guys, honestly, listen to Melissa. Passion is the biggest fire that the human soul is capable of. And if now is the time, despite this uncertain future based on society in general, this uncertain economic time, get started. Like this is just the way it has to be. And Melissa, I think you are a perfect candidate to speak to this exactly, because less than a year ago, you went out on your own and you took that plunge and you took an entire lifetime of skills and passion and experiences that you've built up, and you decided to start your own gig and be your own boss and pick your own clients and pick your own hours. And yes, I will admit, as someone who doesn't work for the corporate behemoth anymore, honestly, it's way more work and it's way more time, right? In a different type of way. Everybody thinks like, oh, I want to be my own boss. Like it's fantastic, but it's a different type of fantastic, right? So I'd love to hear your perspective on someone who has maybe started their freelancing gig, maybe quit their job in the last year or two, and what you are doing right now, Melissa, to make sure that you, as a 1-year green business owner, is doing to survive and make it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question because obviously I had no idea there was a pandemic coming. I think also I had probably somewhat unrealistic expectations of what would happen. People said it's going to take a while, it's this and it's that, and you hear it all, but it doesn't really sink in until it's reality. So I've equated this, I stole this idea, but it's a roller coaster ride. And so a lot of this comes down to what's your tolerance to be on a roller coaster. I do not love roller coasters, but I can tolerate parts of it. And so I think one of the things that I am doing, unrelated to that, but think about the business, is how are the needs of my customers and my clients changing? What are the things that I didn't think I would focus on, maybe I should focus on because they need something different. The good news, or I'm optimistic, I guess, that people will need what I'm good at as much, if not more, in the future. Thinking about, how do I transform my organization? What do I think about my employee experience? How, as a leader, do I navigate this with my team and motivate them? And because they're all stressed, or they're now home and I thought they were together. So I think trying to be creative around what should I do and where, who should I go after right now? I think that to your point about the working hours, I have a ton of flexibility. Like I had good flexibility before, but like it's not a Monday through Friday thing. It's like I'm still thinking about ideas on Saturday and Sunday, and sometimes they're better working times anyway of just idea generation. But it's being willing to, setting the boundaries of what you want to do, but being willing to flex to say, hey, I need to launch this business, which means I need to go do stuff when I don't want to go do it sometimes.
That's most of running a business, I find, is that that alarm goes off, that client calls, that project notification is due, and you can't say no to any of it. And that's one thing that is the double-edged sword of running your own show, is you have to run your own show. So, Melissa, we have a couple more things to talk about, but I think we can end with a grand finale aspect around now your leadership expertise. As someone who works with leaders, who works with businesses, who works with people who run organizations, you believe that two big things should be considered nowadays, if not more than ever, around being a great leader. And those two things are being more of a performance coach instead of a manager. And one of the analogies that you laid down for me, which I grasp onto immediately, is that performance coaching is more like, think of an athletic coach. Did your team perform to maximum level? Whereas a manager is not the same. And the second thing around being a great leader that you pointed out is around belief, right? Do you believe that you can do it, and whatever your goals may be, and can you inspire your team to believe in themselves? So as a grand finale here, Melissa, I'd love to hear you chime into those two things: performance coaching instead of being a manager, and talking about belief and what we can do as a team instead of thinking otherwise.
Yeah, I think those are great topics. So I am, as you said, passionate about this performance coaching and thinking about what are the best coach, like if you were an athlete or your kids are, in athletics, thinking about what those coaches do. And I think some of the lessons that I talk about that are prime right now is, focusing on the whole person. We don't just show up with our work hat on. We're carrying all the stuff that comes along with it. We have a sick parent, we're terrified about COVID, we're doing homeschool. Like that great manager leader needs to take that into account. You can still have your expectations of what somebody needs to do, but you need to be realistic about what else is on their plate. What are they challenged with? I think the other piece is around, utilizing the strengths of the whole team and knowing which player, if you think about the coaching and the athletic coaching, brings which skill set to the table. So if you think about your business team, everybody has an assigned job probably, but is that fully utilizing their strengths? Are you thinking about the individual components of each person's skill set and capabilities and passions to say, how do we make this team most successful right now? How do I harness that? Because if you focus on the individual for the betterment of the team, I think you're going to get the great outcomes, both for the company itself, your clients and customers, et cetera, and your employees will be happier. And I think to do all of that as a leader, I talk a lot about whether it's imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs. And so there's a fine line of coming across of being that person that people trust, that they want to follow, and being confident, et cetera. However, there's something also to not feeling like you have to have all the answers, because no longer do we expect leaders, and frankly, professors in some cases, to be the smartest person in the room? The best leaders are the best curators of content, of people, of ideas, and asking those questions and not assuming they know everything. So I think that's the other thing that's shift. And so back to your limiting beliefs, it's not doubting yourself. Like, all that you have to do, and I say all, but all that you have to do as a leader is believe, I am good at bringing the right people together to solve the problems. All I have to do is curate the right people in the room. And if I am authentic and say, hey, I don't have this all figured out, but I'm going to figure it out, I think my team generally trusts that, A, that I've told the truth, that I'm not perfect. And my team has always known I am not perfect. I screw up a lot, and I, do stupid stuff too. But they know I'm going to go figure it out. And I know that they generally know I'm going to apologize and say, hey, that was really silly that I did that. So I think those are two things I would say is trust yourself. Like, if you don't trust yourself, why is anybody else going to trust you?
I can't tell you how you made me feel, Melissa, when you quoted some other coaches out there and you said, all you have to do to be a leader is, this stuff is ridiculous. And I think most millennials know, who've honestly grown up with the internet and grown up with all these offers and all these people who are trying to sell you something, is that none of these people know what they're talking about either. But there are some people who actually have made change, who have helped organizations and have been able to insert their influence out there in the world. And you are one of those people. And so I think we have a question or two. I have a stock question, but I think there's maybe enough questions to jump right into them, because that was sort of our grand finale leadership question. So Melissa, one of the questions that we have for you, there seems to be more of a gravity factor around breaking off and doing your own thing and actually being the leader within an expertise within leadership skills. So what is one thing? This is a question from the chat. And if I was given this question, I think I would require an entire whiteboard to respond to it. The question is, Melissa, what is something that you did not expect that would happen when you were going out on your own?
That's a great question. I think there were things I had to learn that I just, for whatever reason, didn't think I was going to have to learn. Which was a little bit of ignorance of, okay, I need to figure out how to invoice somebody. I need to figure out how to write a consulting contract. I need to, like, some practical things, or how to create, content, like design stuff. And so I think some of that was the very tactical, but I think the biggest thing was really figuring out how to manage my roller coaster emotions of, hey, I got a win or a great compliment on some content I put out there, and you feel really good. And then there's a little bit of a lull or comparison of, like, okay, but look at that person. And I didn't realize probably how much it would pull out some of the insecurities, and having to manage and think about, where's that roller coaster going next? Like, when you're in the dive, the free fall, it doesn't free fall forever. It either hits that flat part, or you start going back up and chugging back up. And so realizing that it's just a stage that's in. And if I really believe in what I'm doing, then I just got to stick it out and go through that uncomfortable part of the roller coaster.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Melissa. So thanks again, guys, for being a part of the Mill Summit live stream, which is, I think, our 6th or 7th episode. Make sure that you stay tuned for updates about what's happening in August for the 3rd and 4th. You can learn more about us at millsummit.org. You can sign up for the email list, and we stay very consistent on social media, particularly Facebook, as we are doing lots of live streams now, as you can see with the expertise around Melissa. And we have to give a huge thank you and shout out to Capital One, a flagship sponsor for the Mill Summit live stream. Thank you so much for doing what you do to make sure that the Spur Impact community and the Mill Summit organization in general can do what we do to make an impact for nonprofits in Delaware and beyond. So stay tuned for the next live stream. We have not yet entirely established a consistent schedule. I wish I could tell you what that is, but sign up for the email list, check us out on social media, and you will be in tune for that. So thanks again, guys, for being a part of the Mill Summit live stream tonight, April 28th. Melissa Carson, thank you so much. I'll let you close out here. How can people keep in touch with what you are up to, and how can people reach out to you if they have anything around that?
Great question. So a couple different places. I'm on LinkedIn, Melissa Carson. I post every day around leadership or self-awareness type things. My website is on the bottom, crimdelconsulting.com. You can reach out to me there. And then I also have Melissa at Crimdel Consulting on Facebook. So lots of opportunities. My Instagram's there, but it's not very active right now. So LinkedIn and Facebook are where you'll find me.
Fantastic. Again, guys, thanks again for checking out a Mill Summit live stream. Capital One, thank you for your sponsorship, and we'll see you again in another live stream. See you again later. Bye-bye.